Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to say a few words this afternoon on the third reading of the Education Legislation Bill, and perhaps, if you wouldn't mind, can I just start with an acknowledgement of the Minister who spoke to launch this discussion this afternoon. In light of her announcement yesterday, I think she will go down as one of the greatest Minister of Education that we have had. And what is clear, and you saw it again this afternoon, is the absolute focus that she has on our children and their achievement and attainment through the education system. And as Scott Simpson said in front of me, it's a passion that you can see, it's a passion she's lived by, and it's a passion that she has driven through the education sector. And she's got a lot to be proud of, Mr. Speaker. When this government took over, Māori education achievement NCA level 2 was 44%. It's now well over 70%. The national amount is 83%. These are real results, and as a parent of 3 kids in the education system, I am delighted with the leadership that she has provided. And wasn't it great to see, Mr. Speaker, the near unanimity of acknowledgement of her contribution yesterday? It wasn't exclusive, of course. There were a couple of unions who didn't have the grace to acknowledge her contribution, but in my view that actually talks more to their lack of reputation than it does the Minister. And look,
to the bill.
This is a particularly strong piece of legislation that we on this House are very, very happy to support, Mr. Speaker. And one of the interesting, I guess, components of the difference in philosophy that we have seen throughout the debate, we've already heard it this afternoon, we have heard it at every single time that this House has reflected on this piece of legislation, is this view from the opposition that what we have embedded in this legislation is compulsion. It is not compulsion, it is choice. It is enabling communities of schools, in this case Board of Trustees, to have more flexibility in the way they manage their affairs. But it talks more, Mr. Speaker, to the political philosophy that underpins the other side, because they see every example of innovation and reform through the lens of compulsion, through the lens of directing from the centre to the rest of the country how they live their lives and what they need to do, and everything needs to be prescribed and every single variable noted, and it has to be driven from the centre. Where this party's philosophy is that you create a framework that enables choice, and that choice is delivered by boards of trustees and parents around the country for the benefit of their kids, and it works, and we've got a clear record of it working over the last 8 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in particular, when we reflect on, the very considered comments from Jenny Salesi, and she talked and gave voice to their concerns around the changes that are in this bill. Again, you see those differences coming to stark focus. When we talk about school opening hours, creating opportunity, their view is that somehow that could result in communities not being aligned, and so therefore this is a problem. Where we say that this is a choice that a community can sit and reflect on, and if it works for them, if it works for their parents, if it works for their schools and their children, then they should be enabled to consider it. And that, Mr. Speaker, I think points to the difference in philosophy that underpins our two sides, including, sir, the example of principals to lead more than one school. And yet again we've heard today this particular scenario around who exactly is going to be the employer of the principal if he or she is across 1 or 2 schools. There is a complete lack of imagination on the other side, Mr. Speaker, that somehow 2 boards of trustees can't get together, can't identify which of those 2 boards of trustees should be the best group who will oversee the contract of the lead principal across the 2 schools. That can't be imagined. They can't imagine that you could develop a contract that could deal with the permutations around performance and what happened if they needed to step away from that position. It happens in the real world every day, but that side can't imagine that boards of trustees have the wit and the intelligence and the common sense to pull it together well. Mr Speaker, as I've said before, this party understands that you can back parents, that they've got the collective capability sitting on boards of trustees to imagine that and deliver it and get an outcome which is better for our kids, and that is why this party is so supportive of this legislation. It talks to the stark difference around the future of education, and this side knows how to deliver it in partnership with parents. Thank you, sir.